Aunty Gerri, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey,
yes.
welcome.
Hey. Okay. I'll just go straight into the welcome.
Yes, please.
Yes, Aunty Gerri Page. I am a Mununjali woman. I am from Mununjali people. And I would like to do the welcome to country for the arts dinner today, tonight. So, Minagu Ngari Wala Mununjali jargon. So, good evening and welcome to Mununjali country. As we are gathered here tonight on this beautiful land, we respectfully acknowledge elders that have gone before us for passing on the dreaming of spiritual connection to the country. And they have passed on values, beliefs, and the knowledge of sharing love and care for each other, to be generous in giving, like sharing food, how to use tools, skills, song and dance, and stories. And I think the song and the dance and the arts has always been a wonderful part of our people. It's all about the song lines and the rivers and the connection and the art. And I think this is a special night for everyone that's involved, and I think that you do a wonderful job. And I also acknowledge elders past. I also acknowledge elders present for continue the dreaming, for making tracks and connections, sharing the history of stories and of the knowledge and keeping the dream alive to hand on to our emerging elders. And that's really important. I think that's what this is all about our art and passing on and handing down the art and the dance and the storytelling. So I think that, plays a beautiful part in our life. And I think that with everything that's happening with the coronavirus and, this and setting all this up, I would like to thank you very much for inviting the elders to be a part of this. Unfortunately, all our elders have the internet and have have all that Facebook stuff and with the social media, but I'm quite sure that I will pass this on and let them know that I have done the welcome. And as always, you always make us welcome and vice versa. Thank you for your kind invitation to the traditional Mununjali elders to do the welcome. It's always a proud custom to share and spiritually uplifting to have our Mununjali people acknowledged. So I would like to thank you and good evening. Thank you.
Gerri. This is an arts dinner, so you can't have a dinner without food, can you? So here in the kitchen at the centre we have Kate Raymond, who is the Scenic Rim Regional Food Ambassador, and she'll be cooking up a storm for us with bush spice barramundi with tomato and lemon myrtle salad. We'll pass over to Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate. Thank you for having me at this very special arts dinner. And yes, as Bron mentioned, I'm going to be cooking a beautiful bush spice barramundi with an heirloom tomato, lentil and lemon myrtle salad. So get ready. So we're going to use some lovely local ingredients today too. Everything that we try and do in the Eat Local at Home kitchen is sourced locally. So I've got a beautiful piece of barramundi, which is a native Australian fish, obviously. We're going to be using some gorgeous native spices. Now, they are a little hard to find in the supermarkets, but you can certainly order them online. The ones I have here are from Herbie Spices. Now, it's really, really easy to go onto their website and order these spices. They have lots of different Indigenous and native Australian spices, so it's really easy to access, actually. We've got some beautiful pepperberry, which, as you can see, does look a lot like black pepper. It does have a little tartness and a little tiny sweetness, but it is a pepper. We've got a gorgeous bush spice mix here that includes some cinnamon, saltbush, lemon myrtle and some pepper leaf. Now, pepper leaf is actually used more like a bay leaf as opposed to pepperberry. So that's in there as well, and some roasted wattle seeds. So we're going to use that and make a rub for our fish. And then we're going to use some gorgeous fresh lemon myrtle, some local garlic, local lime, and make a gorgeous dressing for our heirloom salad. So maybe we'll just get started. So I've got the pepperberry here. We're going to use maybe about 5 or 6. And what I want to do is just crush them and then just give them a really slice, like finely sliced. Doesn't matter if there's some little larger pieces in there because they'll create a nice little bite when you make the spice rub. So we've got a little bit of our native bush spice and a little bit of our wattle seed. Okay, so I'm just going to mix that through. Got our lovely piece of barramundi here and a little bit of salt. Now this salt is what they call a macrobiotic salt. And it's from Olsen's, who are an Australian company. They actually own a farm out in the Kerry Valley, the Olsen's do. So, and they make beautiful different salts. They make smoked salts and this gorgeous macrobiotic salt, which just generally means that it is naturally sun and air dried, which is gorgeous. So nothing else added to it, obviously. So we're just going to coat our barramundi with that spice. Now in a pan just next to me, I have some butter and a little bit of Australian olive oil. Now adding butter, not only does it enhance the flavour, but it also stops proteins from cooking. And on that note, I've got to say, I have taken this fish out of the fridge just for probably about 5 to 10 minutes to come to room temperature, just so that whenever you're cooking a protein, you want that protein to come to room temperature so that when it hits the heat, it doesn't seize up, which makes generally proteins go a little bit tough. So I'm just heating my butter and some olive oil in the pan. We've got our spice on that beautiful fish. And while that's cooking in the pan, we're going to make our dressing and then our gorgeous tomato salad. So this is a really easy recipe that you can do at home. You can certainly use chicken if you prefer, or even tofu or halloumi, which is gorgeous. So there's a couple of different options there. I'll just grab this. I just want to give that a little bit of a stir around so that when our fish heats that pan, it creates a nice crust and is hot enough. That certainly helps it to stop sticking as well, that it's hot enough when you put your protein in that it's not going to stick. Sometimes when you find you're cooking fish or particularly chicken too, if you go and turn that too early, it means it's not quite cooked enough on that side, and that's when it begins to stick. So you can hear that sizzling away now. So we're going to add our fish into there. Beautiful. So look, that's going to take about 8 minutes to cook. And what we want to do, and I'll get Jim to close up on that when we get a bit closer, is we need it to be sort of halfway through cooked before we're going to turn that. Okay, so I've only had spices on my board now, so what I'll do is just brush some of those aside, and then we're going to start and add dressing. So here I've got some fresh lemon myrtle. So all myrtles are edible. You can get licorice myrtles and cinnamon myrtles and all different kinds, but they are all edible. Lemon myrtle in particular has got really good antibacterial properties. It's great to use in teas and tisanes. I make a really, really lovely like green curry lemon myrtle paste with fresh lemon myrtle, which is great for coconut, fish or chicken curries, mixed with a little bit of coriander and also flat leaf parsley, green chilies, garlic, ginger, a beautiful curry paste. So I've got some fresh leaves here. So what I've tried to use is the youngest leaves, ones that are a little bit more tender, like those ones here. Jim, if you can get a shot of that. Just because they're a little bit softer and they lend themselves better to dressing. If you need to use the older leaves, these ones that are a little bit more robust, just immerse them in a little bit of boiling water or hot water till they soften, and then they can make a beautiful paste or pesto. So I've got my lemon myrtle leaves here, and I'm just going to slice them up very finely. This dressing can be as refined or as, should I say, coarse as you like it. So you can put it in a, a small food processor or blender, and it will go quite emulsified. This one we're just going to do a little bit of a, I keep thinking backyard, but it's not really backyard, but just a little bit home kind of dressing more than anything. So what I want to do with these is just keep slicing them till they're nice and fine. I might just turn the heat down on that fish a little bit. We want it just to be on a medium. I'll just have a check of that. Okay, I might be turning this over earlier than I thought, and then we might just keep it down. Turn the heat down a little bit. Smells beautiful. I hope you're all hungry. Okay, back to our dressing. So I have my lemon myrtle and my parsley there. I've got some beautiful, just 1 clove of local garlic that I'm just going to slice finely. Always easier to find a flat edge when you're chopping things like garlic and parsley and stuff. We can also just mash that a little bit, which will be just release some of the oils from that garlic into there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of salt to this, and I'm just going to bring all that together. Smells beautiful, very fragrant. The lemon myrtle is so very fragrant. It's glorious. Okay, in my little bowl here. So I think the recipe that Bron has sent out serves too. So this will certainly serve too. I know in the recipe too it says fresh lemon, so you can use fresh lemon or limes. I actually happened to come across some beautiful limes from Beechmont, so I thought I'd take advantage and use those, and some olive oil. Now, usually when you're making a dressing, you're looking at 3 parts oil to 1 part acid. But always taste it. Sometimes I prefer some of my dressings to be a little bit more acidic. And another good tip with dressings, when you're making them like this and not blending them all together, but so much so a little bit rougher, it's great to let them sit and infuse too. So I'm just checking that for acidity. I might put a little bit more lime in that, and maybe a touch more salt. And again, lovely. Needed that little bit more acidity and that little bit more acid for that. So always taste as you go, and that way you know that you're getting things right. Let me just check our fish again. Okay, gorgeous. I might just turn that back over to the first side. It just needs a little bit more on that first side. Okay, so plating our salad. I have some beautiful heirloom tomatoes. So we've got some, and colour really is the key. So I've got some beautiful ready brownie ones. I've got gold ones, some gorgeous yellow ones, and obviously these red ones that I'm going to use as well. I have this gorgeous salad mix. There's a lady out in the Canungra Valley near O'Reilly's, Pretty Produce, and she's growing edible flowers and salad mix, and she really does the most superb salad mix. It's full of flowers. It's full of all your beautiful little micro herbs and amaranth and, you know, bull's blood and all that kind of stuff, mitsuna, all your edible flowers. So I thought it might be nice just to put a little bit of that on the bottom of our plate. I've got lots of edible flowers to go through at the end there as well. But we just want to, it doesn't really matter how you want to cut your tomatoes. I think these larger ones might look better sliced, and then we might mix it up with a couple of different shapes from our smaller tomatoes. Tomatoes really are the best things when they're in season. So let's have a look. We'll lay these as a bit of a base. Just checking back to our fish. That's looking really gorgeous and really, oops, that's that reducing point. I'm thinking that will only need another minute or so. Even so, it will do well for that fish just to rest for a little minute while we're finishing the plating of our salad here. So that's looking pretty beautiful. I've just got some pui lentils here. Now they are just from organic lentils, macro organic lentils, which you can buy at any supermarket. I'm just trying to look. But they're a great little protein to add to your salad as well. And certainly if you're vegetarian or vegan and you're using either tofu or halloumi or another substitute, these are a great protein addition to your salad. So you can just scatter them around like that. A red onion. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this fish out and I'm going to rest it on that board there. We'll put this side down because it actually looks really quite pretty. Well, prettier, I should say. Now, our red onion. So we just want to slice this really finely. Obviously, it's optional. I love red onions in salads because it has a lovely sharpness and creates a little bit of acidity. Plus, I think the colour always looks really, really gorgeous. Now, red onions or Spanish onions are generally a little bit sweeter than your brown onions, a little bit milder in flavour. So they're great for salads. Okay, beautiful. What do I think we might do? Okay, our next ingredient. I have some Towery yoghurt. So this is sheep's yoghurt and it's made just out at, just outside of Beaudesert at Towery Sheep Cheeses, who are a beautiful local business who've supported Scenic Rim for and great, a lovely producer to be part of the Scenic Rim. So, and Caroline makes beautiful, beautiful cheeses, hard cheeses and the soft yoghurt, and she makes Baja, which is a feta. So if you get a chance when we're all back on board, or they sell them at the Big Pumpkin, so it's a great place to stop by and get some Towery products. If you don't have a piping bag, and I'm only doing this because it's a bit fancy pants, but you don't have to. You're more than welcome just to use teaspoons on the side of your feta or your sheep's cheese. But if you don't have a piping bag, this is just a snap lock glad bag, and I'm just going to pipe. So you just chop the end off. I'm just going to pipe little mounds of the tauri just in and around our salad, and that's going to create a beautiful little point of interest with the colour there. So that's gorgeous. We have our dressing, which I'm going to put over now. So as you can see that there, it's quite homey for a dressing, but I actually love the texture of the roughly cut herbs and the garlic in that. Sometimes I think it gets a little bit lost when it's all blitzed together. So I'm just going to drizzle that over. And you can be quite generous because we do have quite a lot of salad there. Luckily for people at the centre, there'll be some leftovers perhaps. But that does look gorgeous on top of that. Now, we're just going to add some finger limes. So these are from the Lime Caviar Company up at above Christmas Creek. I don't remember their address, but we're going to squeeze over some finger limes as well. So they do fresh finger limes and they do frozen finger limes. I'm just wondering, oh, sorry about that. And here they are here. They have gorgeous colours. As you can see, they have Byrons, which are dark pink, and a champagne. I'm not sure whether we have any different ones. Let me just cut one of these open and see. No, we just have all, you can see that that's turning a little bit pink through there, which is very, very, very pretty, as you can imagine. Okay, so now we've got some edible flowers straight from Pretty Produce here, as you can see, which is gorgeous. So all these flowers are edible and they can do them in petals or like this whole, but I always tend to, especially with marigolds, I always tend to pull the petals off so they look quite pretty. So we'll place some of those. This is getting quite fancy pants now. You don't have to do this for dinner. But it does look very pretty, I've got to say. So I just pull them out of the stem, place them around. I've also got some baby watercress here, which is grown on Mount Tamarine, which is gorgeous. We can add that. So that'll add a lovely little bitter note to that. So that will round off the beautiful ripeness of those tomatoes. So we'll add that in. And I've got some lemon balm, which is growing in my garden, but these leaves look really beautiful too. And they'll balance a little bit of that lemon flavouring coming through from the lemon myrtle. And finally, I really think we should put some of these gorgeous, gorgeous purple little edible flowers on there. I'm sorry I don't know the name of these, but they look divine. So I don't know whether any of you may have noticed the Scenic Rim Farm box that I have here on the bench, but Scenic Rim Farm Box is an initiative that's just been launched, and we're really trying to take the Scenic Rim up to Brisbane. Given that Eat Local Week was cancelled for this year, we still want to give all those beautiful producers, a lot of whom I'm acknowledged here, a chance to get their product up to Brisbane. So we're really very excited about this, and a lot of these products are available in the Scenic Rim Farm Box, which is customisable, so you can order as much or as little as you want. We'll have this size box and we'll have a half size box. So you can certainly make it as large or as small as you want, and it's a great idea for gifts. And it gets delivered straight to your home, contact free. So that's another great thing that's happening. I'm just gonna drizzle that with a little bit of olive oil, ready to bring our bush spiced fish over. Out of my hands. Now I'm just going to, just have to do a little drizzle of olive oil on that fish as well, just to give it a little bit of gorgeousness. And maybe we'll do a little bursted finger lines on the top there. Just like that. And there we have a really beautiful bush spice barramundi and tomato, lentil and lemon myrtle salad. So I hope if you try this recipe at home that you enjoy it, and any questions, contact Bron.
Thanks, Kate. That looks fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I will definitely download that recipe and make it at home myself. If you've just tuned in to welcome to the Arts Dinner Online. We're streaming to you tonight from Zoom and YouTube Live. I'm Michelle Blair and I'm your Southwest Queensland Regional Arts Services Network rep. And I'm on the stage at the Empire Theatre in Toowoomba. You can post questions throughout the night and the team at Arts Front, who are behind the scenes making this happen, will get that to us to make sure we ask our guests tonight some of these questions. Arts Front and their team are working on this project from various locations around southern Queensland, with everyone in self-isolation and observing physical distancing guidelines. If you want to catch this again later or share with your friends or community, go to YouTube Live, which you can find at the Live at the Centre website, or go to the Arts Front website. I'd like to thank Arts Front and encourage you to check out their website and register for a host of online events and conversation in the arts they're making happen right around Australia. Right now, we're going across to Brendan Knight and Raymond Cordingly, two young Indigenous creatives that are founders of the Mununjali Ngari, and I think that they are in Beaudesert somewhere.
What I've just said is good evening and hello. I'm Brendan Knight. I'm here this evening with my cousin Raymond, and we're going to perform a traditional welcome dance called Walu, which was given permission to us by Uncle Mad Pot Curry. Walu. Walo walo nga, kuwe kuwe. Jangai wai malia, buana jalu. Hop, wangani no nya jimbala, dimanda nalera. Jangai monga no ngani ya kuwe kuwe. Hop, walo walo nga, kuwe kuwe. Jangai wai malia, buana jalu. Hop, wangani no nya jimbala, dimanda nalera. Yakai. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mununjali Ngari. That's fantastic. Hope it's not raining out there in Beaudesert at the moment. As if you've just joined us, I'm Bronwyn Davies. I'm the coordinator of cultural services here in Beaudesert, and I'm on the stage in an empty theatre, and would like to just take this time to pay homage to all the artists, arts workers, technicians, performers and event organisers around the world who are really feeling the pinch at the moment. I'm sitting on a chair at the moment that is made by a local artist from Tamborine Mountain called Beck Anderson, and she's a rug maker, and she's pivoting her arts practice by offering rug supplies, and you can go to her website and book in for classes and gatherings and all sorts of things. So really encourage you at this point in time to recognise that it's great to have all this free stuff online, but it's important to think that those artists actually need to keep their revenue going. So really encourage you to support the artists in our local community. We're joined tonight by a fantastic panel, and I really thank them very much. In Sydney, we have Jeff and Julie Crabtree, authors of Living with a Creative Mind. In Brisbane, we have Paul Osuch, founder and CEO of Anywhere Festival. In Beechmont, we have Jessica Brown from the Wildfire Creative Recovery Project. Hi, Jess. In Toowoomba, we have Alex Starling, and now I've got that wrong, haven't I? Alex Yeah, Alex will correct you on that one. From Tinker in Toowoomba. And in Beaudesert, we've got Mike Townsend from the Beaudesert Chamber of Commerce, but also the St George Harmony Centre. We'll also have in Melbourne, joining us soon, Ros Abercrombie, who's the Executive Director of Regional Arts Australia, and she'll be coming on a little bit later. But right now, we'll cross over to Michelle in Toowoomba.
Thanks very much, Bron. Welcome to Alex Starling. That's all right. Alex, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Tonight's dinner online. We'll start with you with, so in the middle of COVID-19, how has this changed your arts practice and what are you doing to shift your practice?
Yeah, so I am a regional artist and I also run and operate a studio called Tinker in Toowoomba. And through Tinker, I offer kids and adult workshops. And I also offer community engagement by partnering with key stakeholders from our region. And where possible, I'm really passionate about capacity building for other regional creatives in the area. For me as a business model, I'm a super planner. I've got my finger in every pie and I'm working on multiple projects simultaneously, and it's nothing for me to be planned 6 to 12 months in advance. Like normally I would be able to tell you what I'd be doing in, 6 months from now. COVID-19, when it hit, was for me the 16th of March, the day that the ban on large festivals and gatherings was enacted, and it was immediate. I woke up and by 10 a.m. that morning, I had lost like my income entirely. It wasn't like a slow drip for me. It was just, the cancellation of all the foreseeable work for the future. And there was like a big emotional side to that, which I think I really need to acknowledge, because I am one for making sure that my brand and my business and everything looks positive and is always looking towards the future. And I know that sometimes on the outset, it came across as being quite all together and I had this big master plan to make it happen. But really behind the scenes, I was treading water and just trying to salvage what it was of my business. And so outside of losing my income and all that kind of security, I had a very practical thing I needed to consider, and that was rent of my space. I rent a space in town, and within the 2 weeks, I needed to pay my rent. I had a little bit there, but obviously this was going to be an ongoing cost and something I needed to factor. So I immediately needed to transition to online delivery. It was not something that I could really think about too much. It was, okay, I know how to deliver workshops. My art students as children, they are the ones who I felt really needed this through this whole thing that was happening around us. And so I decided to pivot online with workshops. And in that process, I had to learn film, editing. I had to rebuild my entire website. It was this huge learning process, and to make it sort of happen. And then once I did the first one and it kind of went and it happened, my mindset changed, and all of a sudden I realized that I was so stuck in the whole what my geographical location could do and what I was able to connect with in my region, where now with this platform online, I was able to access people from all over Australia and kids from all over, and also different demographics that just weren't able to make it to my studio or my pop-up workshops at different places. And so I really started to lean into what digital platforms could mean for me as an artist. And through that, I have been connecting with other artists and looking at what that could actually look like. We're having big discussions about creating online events and galleries and showcases and collaborating and just pooling our disciplines together for the actual online platform. So I'm still learning. Like I feel like at this point I am still kind of making it up as I go, still, trying to learn stuff. It's a very ad hoc process, but I'm excited about what the actual online process can, bring to my practice. Initially, it was this whole, I need to replace what I'm doing online. And then just by a default kind of setting where I was like, I need to make stuff that is recorded and then uploaded online, because I have young children and they're not something that can be reliable with having live classes and always busting into the room and everything. So by creating, online content that wasn't necessary to be live to, or people could access through subscriptions, I actually, without thinking about it, have now diversified my business, and I have created an online program that runs parallel with my actual physical program when eventually I can start it all back up together. So yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy process, but getting there. So yeah.
No, just quickly, you're saying it widened your audience. So how far are you going? How far do you know your workshops are getting across the world?
Through the subscription process, at the moment, but definitely targeting Australia, and that's just where my ads are going towards. But I'm getting people from Melbourne, and I've got a family in Perth who are subscribed, and surprisingly, only like 50% of my current subscribers are through my existing, network pool. It's actually already automatically just opened up to a whole different range of people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks very much for your time tonight, Alex. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Over to you, Bron.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Alex. That's really interesting how you can really have a change in your mindset and make the best of what is not a great situation. Now I'm going to throw to Jessica, who hasn't been through a great year, I have to say. Jessica is up at Beachmont. You were one of the first communities hit with the recent fires over spring and summer, and now COVID-19. How's this impacted your practice as an artist, and how are you and your community responding?
Thanks, Bronwyn. It's impacted me deeply as an artist. It's impacted our community deeply, and our responses. So I'm Jessica. I'm an artist. I'm a poet. I'm a teacher in our local community. I'm a community cultural development worker. I'm a mother of 3 young children. I live in Beachmont. I run a grassroots community organisation called The Little Pocket. So we have 3 programs we run in our community: our Nature Play Club, our Regeneration Arm, which is our environmental and sustainability project, and now Wildfire, which is our creative project, which is in response to the fire. So I'll just tell my story a little bit so you can see where I come from. So on the 6th of September in 2019, I had a text message saying, "Leave now." The fire was burning from Canungra through the Sarabah Valley and up towards our home in Beachmont. I had to evacuate my home with my 3 young children. My youngest was 3 months at the time. And as I drove out of Beachmont with the cloud behind me, there was this uncertainty if we would come back to our home. That next morning, sadly, 8 of our neighbours lost their home. 1 in the Summit, the street over, 2 in Binnaburra, and of course the historic Binnaburra Lodge burnt that day. That fire burnt for 23 weeks in the Lamington National Park area, and 5,500 hectares were lost. That's a really long time to be smelling smoke, to be dealing with that stress. So many people in our community lost their livelihood, their homes. Businesses were impacted by loss of tourism. And most importantly, for a lot of us, there was a loss of sense of safety in our home. So when you get that message, "Leave now," and then 7 months later, you get a message that says, "Stay home." That's a really big shift within 7 months for one community. And that's happening all across our country. For some people, it's only been a 3-month gap between that "stay home, leave now." So we're dealing with a really vulnerable community in Beachmont already. And after our unprecedented fire that burned through this area, as I said, it went across Australia. So how did I respond to this? 2 months after the fire in Beachmont, we had a day called Regeneration, and we held it at our house, a little pocket, and we invited people together to connect, because that's what we knew we had to do, connect. And that's what's been so interesting between this disaster and the last. Through the fire, we could connect. The rural fire is mobilised. The CWA was mobilised. People came together. There was that connection. That's how we knew to respond. And now, 7 months later, in this current disaster, it's isolation. So that instinct of coming together, it's such a massive shift. But there's still that desire to connect. So that's where we're looking for those new platforms. So how do we do that? So going back to that Regeneration Day, we came together, we laughed, we cried, we danced, the kids played, we had art activities, we did a community painting, we celebrated, we talked about climate emergency, we had deep conversations, and it was so beautiful and healing. But it was that connection, it was the coming together in place and space. So again, how do we do that now when we can't come together? So these are the questions that as artists in that community area, in the community cultural field or community arts, these are the questions we're asking. How do we connect in isolation? How do we collaborate when we can't be together? And this is a perfect example tonight, Bronwyn, what you've done, bringing people together. It's fabulous. So from that day, a few things emerged. The Beachmont Brotherhood started. So the men in Beachmont formed their own group, their own support group, which has been fantastic. It's been absolutely brilliant. They meet together to maybe drink a few beers, but have a yarn, support each other. And that's been really, really fantastic. The regeneration program got traction because some people's response to the fire or the climate emergency was to take action, real action, climate action. So an environmental project begun with Sally McKinnon and Todd Brown leading the charge. And also from that, I started to have conversations that day about what did people pack? In that moment, when you had to evacuate your house, what did you take? What was important to you in that moment? When you had to look around your house, you had 10 minutes. What did you take? And it was really powerful conversations. It was really, someone took a carrot cake and a pillow. Someone else took the love letters from their first boyfriend. Someone else took practical things, the computer, the important files. I took my children's quilt and their comforter. So in having those conversations, it was really, there was so much to be said in that moment. So there's a play in this. Okay. So I've started to write a play called Leave Now, which explores that theme of what's really important. And it's light, but it's deep, it's beautiful. So from that, the idea of the play, I talked to a few people, Bronwyn included, and a few other people in the community. And then I realized that there was need there for something more, that there was space in our community to run our community arts project. So I put together a project brief, talked to some people, and that's where Wildfire, the creative recovery project, has come from. And that aims to bring people together to tell their story. There's going to be many platforms that we can do that. So where we're at now is in that planning stage. So it was a very clear process. We were going to have interviews, courageous conversations, come together, make some big collaborative art pieces, have an exhibition. But that's changed slightly now. So it's how do we do that? How do we still achieve that in our current space? How do we just talk about a previous disaster amongst the current one? How do we connect in isolation? And the arts can do that. And like Alex said before, it's just looking for new ways. We need to look for new platforms to create those opportunities of connection. And what Alex said was really inspiring, that there are new ways there. and that it can create new possibilities and opportunities that maybe I hadn't considered. So it's exciting. I do need to learn some new skills. I'm not good at this tech stuff. This is a little bit out of my comfort zone. Give me a stage and a group of people. Brilliant. Give me a computer. Not so great. So I think what next for me is definitely going back to my project plan, reassess the what, the how, learn some new skills in technology, learn, connect in with the Creative Recovery Network, because now that shift is not just in recovery, it's in disaster preparedness. If this is the unprecedented moving from one disaster to the next, it's going to become that new normal, then it's not just recovery, it's preparedness. And that's a whole new level of skill. So definitely connecting with the Creative Recovery Network and learning new technical skills. So that's how I'm going to respond now. So wish me luck.
Thanks so much, Jess. We'll talk with you later. Now, have we got Mike there? Mike Townsend?
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
Mike, how are you?
Good, Michelle. How are you?
Welcome to our dinner tonight. So, Mike, how has COVID-19 impacted your work with artists and community, and what are you doing to work differently and respond to the different needs?
Well, first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners across our entire regions. I work across 3 or 4 different regions, and COVID-19 has created some very significant challenges and a couple of really unique opportunities. And I'm the CEO for Southwest Indigenous Corporation based in St George. We're working with local Indigenous traditional owners, stakeholders right across Australia to build a harmony centre and a language program to disseminate Kamilaroi, Big and Bull, Puma language, and then offer it back into schools in the St George area. St George, southwest Queensland, 500, 600 kilometres west of Brisbane. 7 years of drought. COVID-19 came on the back of some significant events and fish die-offs. So traditional owners have really suffered in terms of their ability to engage with one another and across the traditional methods. You know, we're isolated, and that's created some immediate issues, and it's put some of our targets and our funding not on hold, but it's called slippage, I think, and we've had a bit of that, and we're still heading towards the ultimate goal of getting our Harmony Centre built and artists engaging with the wider community. One of the things that in preparing for today, I thought I would probably look at 3 things that may help other artists in other areas that they may or may not know about. In terms of emerging as an artist or is emerging as a business, as a sole trader, I think you have to be, and this isn't telling artists what to do, but it's about the approach that we've taken at St George, and it's about having a governance model, having an effective plan, even factoring in things such as events that sidetrack or take away the focus for a short period of time. And we see COVID-19 as potentially taking away or rearranging our focus for a period of time, but it's not going to take us away from the main game. Having a sharp and narrow focus about what it is that you're doing, making sure that you're effective in your marketing and your networking, especially, and giving back to your community and engaging with your community and taking from your community to reflect on how powerful your community is. Art forms, I think, are going to take on a different focus. We're looking at having an immersion program in St George. need to have very big engagement around technology, and I can see that there are some challenges that we are going to face as we move forward. The platform, the engagement platform that we need to work in is going to be multifocal, and we want to engage with overseas visitors as well as local visitors and in-state visitors. We want to make sure that we're effective in our marketing, and I would encourage any business that's looking to start off and re-emerge after COVID to have a really strong, effective marketing plan. And then I think one of the keys that we're looking at in St George is providing a personable story that relates and brings people back to what we're doing. Use this opportunity now while it's difficult, but it's in New South Wales. I know New South Wales TAFE have offered some very unique opportunities to engage with professional development and to build your skill sets. We're working closely with ORIC, the Office of the Registrar of Indigenous Corporations, to work on a program where we can roll out digital governance across the various parts of Australia, and we want to be on the forefront of that. And one of the things I think that people should think about when they're talking about what they're doing and offering, I've seen some people who want to perform online. Unless you're Elton John and you've got lots and lots of money, I think giving up your personal identity and your marketability for free doesn't make too much sense to me, and that's not something that we would encourage from our organisation in St George. Listening to the stories, and I live on the Scenic Rim, and I'm part of the community in Canungra as well. I'm with the local bank there. Bushfires, making sure that moving forward, if you're artists in those areas, making sure that you engage with the different things that are happening in terms of the tax office, and the Australian federal government are giving away some certain deferral of payment and lodgement of documents. Making sure that you fit the postcode, or if you don't know about the postcodes, we should perhaps put together a small information sheet afterwards, making sure that you're in those areas around that. Look at the one-off disaster recovery if you haven't already accessed it, and then look at the state-based grants around the bushfire crisis that really was devastating. When we look at COVID-19, the impacts, I've broken that down into two different areas there around the supports that are there, making sure that you approach your bank and talk to them about hardship. And if you aren't talking to your bank about hardship, at least talk to them about perhaps pausing, giving your, not taking away your responsibility or your liability, but just giving yourself a pause. The Prime Minister, but the legislation has allowed that to happen as well. Looking at the different programs that they have, Job Seeker, which has been increased, Job Keeper, where you need to work with your former employer if you've been stood down, or your current employer if you're able to do that. Look at the state-based and the local government. I know that our local government here in the Scenic Rim, and I know that other local governments across Queensland are giving stimulus to keep local government enterprise going. There are some significant issues around HR that people need to be aware of as well. So they need to make sure that, through COVID-19, if there is a case where you may catch it and it hasn't gone away, there is leave available, and that's been put in place temporarily through Fair Work. Make sure that you have good workplace health safety systems, and you are not you're not putting yourself at risk even in your own home for the sake of work. I think that they're very important. There is, for businesses, Cash Boost, and Cash Boost is available through your BAS. And so if you're a sole trader now, or a small business, or up to $50 million turnover, you can access the Cash Boost if you are eligible, and that provides you with a minimum of $10,000 boost towards your business cash flow. Very, very important. If you're looking to purchase assets, there's a stimulus where up to $150,000 can be written off. So might be even though I know cash is very tight, it might be an opportunity to do some things there. But please remain vigilant around the HR. Make sure that you're complying with the government's requirements to lodge on time and those sorts of things. They are giving some deferrals, but you need to ensure that you lodge on time. Look, I could go on over a few different things. I think the big news at the moment is around JobKeeper, Job Seeker, making sure that, I guess the idea behind it was to have a connection, to retain that connection between employer and employee, and to keep the gateway open, provide up to $1,500 tax inclusive in supported payments, so that you could stay in the workplace and the employer could keep you there. And there's always going to be problems with that, but I think if people who are employees or people who are employers can work in that system, I think it's going to be very effective and keep the economy going. I hope that answers your question, Michelle. We're looking forward to the innovative part of what we're doing in St George, and we hope that as we move forward, we'll be able to engage with further communities outside of our area to disseminate our language, to do some of these sorts of events where we're engaging with other traditional owners across Australia, and really we're looking to be very innovative as we move forward.
That sounds fantastic. Thanks, Mike. I'm really looking forward to being able to actually drive out that way myself. I was lucky enough to be there when after the rains came through, and yeah, I'm looking forward to heading back out that way too. So I'll throw back to
Michelle, could I share something with you? Just before you were in St George in January, my daughter and I were in St George. We were actually able to walk across the bottom of the river, of the Boulogne River. And then our directors sent us a photo, and it's raging. The water was raging. It was absolutely, they were so happy.
It was joyful, wasn't it? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Mike. Well, we've got some questions for you later as well. So I'll cross over to Bron. Thanks, Bron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Mike. Look, I was really moved by what Jess was saying, and I think there's a bit of a thread I'd like to explore with this. Jess, you know, what you said about the what Leave Now project and then the Staying Home project, there's a really interesting tension between those two notions, and this idea of isolation versus, you know, connecting with each other, and this use of, as Alex has done through the internet, and I think some of our other speakers are obviously using online, and as Mike's have said out at St George, the Indigenous elders are looking about how they can keep the connections going. I'm just wondering, you know, it's a lot to take on when you've come from one kind of practice to another. And I know up at Beachmont, you know, the internet connection's not always fabulous, and people are, you know, especially if we think about this conversation being bigger than our region and an Australian issue, and so many people have come through not only the 7 years or so of drought, but this incredible disaster, the bushfires, and then bang, that seems to have been forgotten while we're in a really another global disaster. So to bridge those things, to actually to pivot and to become more agile, I just was noticing, you know, Alex, you went really quickly into a response, and Jessica, you talked about needing to find your way through, and Mike, you talked about your researching ways that the community can come together. And I'm thinking, is there a way that we can start to have these dialogues where people who are already established can share their skills with somebody else? Does anybody know of any kind of like a network or a connection or a collaboration where we can come and share skills and support each other? Alex, how did you find out about how to pivot your business to an online platform?
So I'm very fortunate. My husband actually does video editing, and I have a lot of friends in the creative sector that work with video editing and that. So even though I had to do it myself, I was able to just call on, you know, my networks around me to help me with those actual skills, because it is something that's really, really hard to learn, especially very quickly. And I myself have found myself already mentoring other artists who do similar things to me. They've come to me and they've just said, you know, how did you do it? And we're already having those sort of chats now about how to, you know, give them the skills to be able to do it as well. So.
I think you could share those skills with Jessica and with Mike.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I'm also working on like a local project at the moment where that kind of stuff is it's being like funded, where we are actually capacity building for our region with that particular thing. So I think there's definitely legs to actually make this a proper program that, you know, facilitates artists throughout Australia as well. So more than happy to, but yeah.
Jess.
I did stumble across Bronwyn on the Community Door website the other day, that they're offering free technical professional development programs for not-for-profits. So I'm going to access that this week. That's on my to-do list. So that's the Community Door website. And they have a few different sort of modules and different things that you can do. So that might be another resource. But definitely, Alex, like, sharing, it'd be awesome.
And I'm also thinking that Mike is doing a really important job there, because it's so important being with family if you're in the Indigenous community, and this isolation is very devastating. So I'm just thinking whether what Mike develops in terms of that collaboration could be shared with the community here in Beaudesert and other family groups across southwest Queensland. And Michelle, this might be something that we could look at, how we could roll across southwest Queensland as a, you know, like an ideas bank or something, or a help or support bank that people could tap into with their projects, and tap into people who might be skilled at some particular art form. And I can see on my screen that we've got Tony Risen from Ipswich, who is a writer. Now, it might be that if someone has a project and they might want to tap into an artist who's happy to swap their skills for something else. So maybe this conversation could lead to something else. Let's see. Michelle and I will have to put our heads together. I think probably now we probably should talk to another person who's probably kind of grapple with how to take their event online, and that would be Paul Osuch. Now, Paul is the director and the founder of Anywhere Festival, which I'll let him tell you a little bit about that. Paul, are you there?
I am indeed, Bronwyn. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Can you tell us what's happening with Anywhere Festival, and probably for those who might not have heard of Anywhere Festival, what it actually is?
Right. So Anywhere Festival has been a festival. It's about to have its 10th year, and it is all about performances anywhere but theatre. It's all about, you know, connecting communities, you know, businesses, council, public spaces with performers and audiences, and doing it in a way that enables artists to really take creative risks without all the financial risks that they have with existing theatre infrastructure. So that's Anywhere Festival in a nutshell. Look, we've probably had to do a few things differently given what's happened with COVID. And look, I'm smiling through it, but we were meant to launch the program in late March. There was going to be 700 performances in 131 locations around Brisbane, Noosa and Sunshine Coast, and it was all going to happen in May. So the first big thing that I've done differently is that I've suddenly had time to take a long bath. So that's been great. Also, I think I've suddenly learnt a different way to look at spreadsheets, because every time I look at my financial spreadsheets now, all the numbers seem to have suddenly gone red. I'm not sure if it's my eyes or not, but learning how to deal with that has been a biggie. Bizarrely enough, look, we were kind of lucky. We were lucky by a week. If we'd cancelled a week later, we'd probably be bust now. But because we were able to cancel, and it was, you know, a week or so before the official, you know, reveal of the program, you know, we'd still spent kind of, you know, 95% of our budget, because it's all about getting everything together. It's all about working with all the hundreds of artists, finding all the non-traditional spaces that are offering their spaces for free to the artists, and putting that together into a program. For us, in a way, once we launch the program, you know, we kind of can just, you know, sit back, even if it's just for a few minutes before we go into the festival. The problem is that 80% of our income comes after the launch. So it's really put us in a bit of a precarious position there. But what has actually been good about it, and always a silver lining kind of person here, is that there's a couple of things. And the first is that, yeah, it would have been really busy, whereas now I've actually got, an opportunity, between hustling for money to go, look, what shape should the festival be now? Why is it still relevant? What do we need to do to make it relevant? And we're in a good position because much of the shows at the festival are obviously in little nooks and crannies, so they have a small audience capacity. So as restrictions for COVID-19 possibly start loosening up a little bit, and we get to say 10 people or 20 people, we're in a position where we are actually possibly able to have shows running, within social distancing guidelines and all that kind of stuff, in a way that more traditional spaces can't. So that's our silver lining. So we've really looked at what are the things that we can really maximize in this situation. We've tried starting now. We've got a show called Social Distance Slumber Party, where everyone participates at home in their pajamas via Zoom. We actually limited it to 60 people. We sold out one night, and now we've put on another date in June. You can book it anywhere.is. Even better, what was really surprising, given that we were quite concerned that there really wouldn't be audience demand, that nobody would really want to pay. And I'll talk about this a bit more. But so what we did is we gave people, instead of saying it's $20 or $30 or whatever, we gave people the option to pay $5 or $10 and then went up. And for that first sold out one, the average price paid was just under $20. And most of those people also donated, which was fantastic. And a lot of the people involved that actually bought tickets weren't connected to the show, so are also new audience members that just went, hey, this sounds like a cool idea. So that would have been a big thing for us, because we didn't want to jump into this live streaming bandwagon, because we just couldn't see where artists were going to be able to get paid for it. And that's also always been a huge thing for us. It's big for us. It's big and a big reason why independent artists do Anywhere Festival instead of other things, or as well as. So that was a big thing for us. One of the big things I also did having this space was the slightly unfashionable but important thing of having some really big conversations with the board. We're a company limited by guarantee, so we have a board of 7. Had 3 new members come in November when we had our AGM, and as a board they had been fantastic at being able to react quickly whilst also pulling me back when they needed to, and to be able to sit back and look at what our main vision, what we wanted to achieve, and what we could do and how they could help to do it. So I just want to do a shout out to the board there. One of the big things we're also doing is feel that even if restrictions get completely eased, in 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, really feel that the festival model and lots of festival models need to change. It nearly felt like we're at kind of peak festival, before all this happened. There were festivals everywhere. And so we will actually be changing Anywhere Festival to be a year-long thing. And the reason why we'll be doing this is it allows us to still have little peaks during the year where we can have focus, we can have a showcase in a particular precinct or particular council area. But also, more importantly, it means that the work that's been developed by the artists, they get paid from all the box office, they're able to see a life for that more clearly beyond just those 2.5 weeks of the festival. And they can actually see that there are a whole range of different audiences that they can access to make that into more of an income stream. So that's a biggie. Other one, look, everyone's obviously looking at technology. And look, we've decided pretty much to focus on Zoom. And one of the big reasons for that is it seems to be this thing that I think a lot of live streams, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn here, but a lot of live streams miss that vital thing, that, or one of the many vital things in going to see a live performance. And that is, feeling that you are around with other people, that you're having a shared experience. And I think that's something that Zoom does quite well. This isn't actually new. In our first Anywhere Festival in 2011, we had a show on the Zoom for 2011 called Skype. People may have heard of it. And it was a show that was actually done, it was 6 10-minute plays. Each play was performed in a different country. There was, Germany, the US, Scotland, blah, blah, blah. But Skype had a restriction. You could only have 10 audience people or 10 people on a call. So what would happen is 10 people would go and watch one play, and then they'd basically go around in this circle and see all 6. So the plays got performed 6 times. And that was something that really worked well then. And I think it's a concept that we're really pushing artists to explore a bit more. Thirdly, what we're doing is we have a huge number of relationships with small businesses. All the shows are either in business locations, whether that's spas, cafes, in lighthouses, in people's backyards, all this kind of stuff. And as restrictions get eased and people are trying to get their businesses going, it's not all the economy, but it is a little bit of it, we will admit that. And so it's all about being there and reconnecting people to that as soon as possible, to help those businesses out as well and start getting things happening there. Finally, one a bit more abstract, we're really wanting to take this opportunity to push all the independent artists that we work with to think beyond performing and to think about engagement and connecting and storytelling and building their tribe, because it really feels like our current environment has reinforced how much people do want to engage with arts and culture, but with a different type of relationship. For example, we're in a situation where everybody within the arts can do very little at the moment. There are pockets and there are things that we can do online, but for many of us, it's difficult to do anything. Yet art supplies, music stores are all going gangbusters at the moment. There's possibly more people painting, singing, writing, creating in their own home, and they're not officially part of the arts industry. So we can see that there are people that want to be engaged with arts and culture. And we're in a position here where we've got, we're not necessarily able to do that much, but we've got a bit of an opportunity to have a think and go, how can we tap into this thirst and this interest and come up and rework our models so that we do engage and create that community more than just strictly, performing to people and treating them as an audience. That's pretty much my things, Bronwyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, so much. It's you're right. It's what that think bank. I mean, when we talked about that previously too, is how do we create that tank of information and those people with great ideas and come up with some of those solutions. I'm sure it's just more discussions like this that will lead to great things. Thank you for your time. Rightio, we've got Roz is up next from Regional Arts Australia. She's joining us from Melbourne. Have we got Roz there?
Yep, I'm here. Hello, good evening.
Hello, Roz. How are you?
Good,
thanks
thank
for joining us.
No, thanks for inviting me.
No worries. How is COVID-19 impacting regional arts around Australia, and how are you guys responding to that?
Well, like everyone, it's been a busy time. I think probably importantly for us, it's probably good to wind back a little bit, and sort of a lot of what we're doing now is on the back of a lot of the advocacy and the meetings we had during drought, and then most definitely during bushfire, and then floods, and now bushfire, and now COVID. So it's been a bit of a compounding journey in that policy advocacy space. And it's probably good to sort of have that context of a lot of what we're dealing with in the covert response is on the back of a lot of the conversations that we had around the national bushfire response. And so the conversations that Regional Arts Australia were having with our members and with the regional program administrators, and then to various lines of Australia Council and the Department of the Office of the Arts and into the Minister's Office. A lot of those conversations opened up the connection so that when this actually hit, we were already working as a free four-way partnership really quite effectively. So that's been something to look back on and say that was actually really important. So it's not that we suddenly found ourselves in this unprecedented crisis, not knowing the communication structures and the structures to which we were going to activate, because we were already in crisis activation from bushfires. So that's something probably just important to bring in. And from a regional perspective, I think it is that compounding effect of drought, floods, bushfires, and now covert, that we're trying to keep that messaging at the forefront of, like, this is something that's affecting our artists and our organizations so profoundly because it's a multiplier effect. And yeah, I can talk to you in various detail about that, but I'm just not sure about the format or whether you're going to if we're going to ask, I must be other questions, or if I should keep on my rambles.
No, we will have questions later as well.
Yeah, cool.
And it's so from a Regional Arts Australia perspective, how does it change how you then have to communicate with the government and your members as such, or is it pretty much the same for you?
It's interesting, because actually a lot of what we're dealing with is actually something that I think the regional sector works with in general. Like, our organisation isn't essential. We don't have a central office, a headquarter. We have staff in 4 different states and territories. We have a board member in every state and territory, and we've been using Zoom as our and a virtual office now for the last 18 months. So for us, that's how we have communicated. And the same with our members and our member organisations. That's been how we've connected. It's the volume of that connection that has changed, and that's extraordinary. That when we've gone from maybe having 1 Zoom a week or 2 Zooms a week to connect, I'm finding we're on some sort of communication platform from morning till night, and so that volume is really interesting. I think in the context of regional, a lot of the conversation we're now having that a lot of the community are talking to about in isolation or in lockdown around access to communication channels, internet, feeling isolated, access to connecting with people. They're the conversations that we've been trying to have for a very long time in how to support artists and practitioners in regional and remote places where there are challenges of access and connection and engagement. And we've been looking at how to have those conversations. And to a degree, this is elevating us and fast tracking those conversations so that we can actually have really quite robust cross-portfolio conversations around communications, MBM, access, issues across infrastructure, health, education that we haven't had the same traction with before. So that's actually really interesting. And I actually think that our regional artists and our regional arts orgs are so well placed to lead this conversation and lead a national strategy beyond this. And we talk a lot about what will it look like when we get back to normal, or what's the new normal. And I actually think that we have this amazing opportunity at the moment to reset that and to say, actually, the regional remote narrative is multifaceted, diverse, and extraordinary. And let's find a way to champion and support and represent that diversity so that it is seen for all of the extraordinariness that it is. So it's been really interesting. It has been incredibly full on. I think the amount of roundtables that we're having at that sort of cross-governmental level, particularly into Canberra, is amazing and challenging. It's been also really interesting not to be travelling as much. Like, I certainly in my role last year found myself on a plane pretty much every week or every 2 weeks. But actually, I've met more of the other peak bodies and more colleagues in the last month through a Zoom than I managed to when I was actually flying around the country. And I'm not saying one necessarily outplays the other, but there's merit in all those ways to connect.
Definitely, and as you know, with regional communities, they do like face to face. They do like to meet and talk to somebody to get to know them. But it is definitely helping them evolve in and learn different ways of communicating. Also, and I think that might make our connectedness a lot better as well. And we really do need to try very hard to stay connected and create that community. But I think this gives us a perfect opportunity to find an alternate way of doing that without having to drive 600 kilometres or make those flights.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we found, as you said, we're a national peak body, but it's our member organisations and our regional program administrators. What has been invaluable to us is that I can certainly turn up to those roundtables and provide context into that. But actually, we've been getting granular case studies from all parts of New South Wales and from Queensland, Victoria, from everywhere. We've been getting really specific case studies to a particular artist or particular organisation or to a particular region, and we can actually then measure impact, measure loss of income, measure loss of infrastructure, and we can also provide those granular case studies around the narratives and the stories, and that feeding that in and being able to feed that into the Office of the Arts, into Australia Council has been extraordinary. And I think something that we haven't necessarily, from the bushfires, we were certainly doing that, something we weren't necessarily doing as regularly and as constantly as we are now. And it's total credit to everybody on the ground and everyone in their regions, everyone who's looking after a festival or a theatre or a gallery or an independent artist, providing us with their real stories of what they're going through, what impact things are having on them, what they need now immediately, what they need in 6 months' time when we get to hopefully stage 2, what they need in 2 years' time when hopefully we're finding what a new looking, robust, sustainable sector looks like. So that has been amazing, and how everyone has pulled together and the support mechanisms for that in putting together has been invaluable. And probably important to point out that the success that we had in relation to securing the additional 10 million to the regional arts sector a couple of weeks ago is total credit to the networks and the organisations that have just been relentlessly feeding me information and case studies so that we can then advocate across portfolios into government.
Yeah, it has been a fantastic time for us to stop and take notice and feed it up the line. So thank you. I know we will come back to you later with some more questions as well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I'll pass it back to Bron.
Thanks, Ros. Thanks, Michelle. We're very fortunate today to have a couple of speakers who were at Arts Ablaze who really left a huge impression. So I'd like to welcome Jeff and Julie Crabtree, who are coming from Sydney. You both work with creatives. Jeff, you're a composer and an advisor to the arts, and Julie, you have creative clients. What has the impact of COVID-19 been on the way you operate and work with artists?
So for us, I said I've got a private practice where I'm seeing mostly creative people, performers.
They've been texting me too. Oops.
Performers, musicians, all sorts of people. So the thing that we were kind of due to speak and due to kind of work with clients kind of throughout the country, and suddenly had to flip and switch to to being online. So these are the things that I've particularly noticed with working a lot with clients online, and that is that firstly, one of the first questions they asked is, if I'm not performing, who am I? So their first question was a question of identity. If I'm not performing, then who am I? And I think that for many people in that position, it helped them begin to ask some really important questions about an identity that wasn't just dependent on whether they get the auditions or not, whether they get the gigs or not, but it was beginning this kind of journey of them asking some questions about a security in their own sense of self. And I think for many, it's a difficult process to ask those hard questions, but they're important questions to ask. One of the next things that I've noticed is, and I think Jessica, you kind of commented on this quite beautifully, and that was that our nation has been through a succession of loss and grief and trauma, where we've had it personally, and we've had it in communities, and we've had it across the nation. And so for creative people feel their own pain deeply and feel other people's pain deeply. So for many of the people I see, it's how do I deal with this accumulation of pain? You know, for many of them, I said, look, I can't even listen to the news, because when I listen to the news, I get so deeply impacted by it. So a lot of what we talk about is how you can still learn to feel, but without being overwhelmed by the impact of this accumulation of grief and trauma that we're experiencing. And I think that it is the creative people, as you've demonstrated, who is going to help our community learn to make sense of all of this. Right now, we're kind of in survival mode. But I think that as artists kind of feel and make sense of and put language and images and around this, it will help. It will help our country, our nation, understand what it is, what it has been. I think one of the most moving things I saw last week was in Switzerland. They showed an image of the Australian flag, because it was in recognition of us as a nation having gone through the bushfires and now COVID-19. And I think that's an incredibly moving thing. And I think as creative artists, how to begin to journey through that. We're not there now. We're in survival mode. But it will be part of, I think, what we will bring to that. But the first thing is taking care of ourselves and not becoming too overwhelmed by the onslaught of the pain that we hear, not just within our community, but particularly overseas. I think that we will be processing this for a long, long time. One of the last things that I noticed is, for many people, they went into their kind of creative caves, and they've done their artwork. They've started to write. They've started to do a lot of that. And what they're saying to me is, I'm feeling very safe in this little place of mine, but I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. This has been such a place where I kind of protect myself from everything else, and I'm doing my work, but it scares me because I've got so used to being by myself, to isolating. And it is, if we're introvert, it's a very comfortable place for us. If we're feeling a bit flat, we tend to self-isolate. So I think part of that is beginning to take or even mentally think about starting to move out of our isolated places. Because as we talked about, we need our community. We need to explore. And so recognizing when we are becoming a little bit too self-isolating, when we're becoming too insular with our own artwork, and just taking that risk, with, as Bron was kind of called us to just, reach out to the community. Don't know if you want to add anything.
I think that's a really great summary. And one of the things for us, we've been impacted, like everybody else has been impacted financially. We've lost work. But one of the things that we have learned over the years, the many years of working in creative industries, is you have to learn to be flexible, and you have to learn to be adaptable, because a creative life is full of peaks and troughs. It has these ups and downs. You can have seasons of, I think, 7 fat years, 7 lean years, 7 lean years, 7 fat years, that kind of, you can have plenty and then drought. And so one of the things that we learnt to do was to have a number of different ways of being able to pivot. And people are learning how to pivot now, I think, perhaps for the first time, because they have to. Can I say the silver lining of this cloud is that ability to pivot quickly to an alternative source of revenue. I think the sorts of things that Paul was talking about, and some of the things that I think, and the way Alex talked about her rapid pivot, those sorts of things I think are part of the landscape of the future. I don't believe that live performance is going to go away. I don't believe that I believe that people still want to gather. And I think that festivals will still have peak events, Paul, I think, and to everyone else. I think there is a lot of wisdom in being able to find this balance between what we know as our sweet spot, and yet the ability to be able to shift and adapt to rapid change. That's what we're all learning. But if history teaches us anything, it teaches us that we've had, you've got to remember that COVID-19 is one out of countless plagues that the human race has endured for centuries. And we're talking about the Black Death. I mean, the Spanish flu. And, we're talking literally hundreds of millions of people have lost their lives over the centuries to pandemics of one kind or another. And we tend to, the human race tends to return to those things that are the sweet spot. And I do believe that the very cry for community and being able to be together and gather together is an essential quality. So much essential quality what it means to be human. It means that I'm of the opinion that the penalty we're paying now will be relatively short in terms of the breadth of human history, and there'll be live performances again. We may be warier. They may be of a different nature. They may start small, but it will be coming back. We'll be coming back. That's offer that little message of hope, maybe to end our current contribution.
That's great. Thank you. Michelle.
Thank you. We're going to cross now over to Joanna, who is in Coralbin, and she is a musician and a teacher. Have we got Joanna there? Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
Welcome. How have you and your community responded creatively to COVID? And could you play something for us as well tonight?
Yes, I can do that. I'm a piano teacher, and I was going to schools and people's homes to teach, and then all of a sudden, boom, that all stopped. So I became an online piano teacher overnight, basically. I think it was something I'd always had in the back of my mind, but, you don't really get around to doing everything. And I decided to do two things quite quickly. One was to buy an iPad because I didn't want to be trying to do it from my phone, And also I thought internet is really important. So I upgraded my NBN to the biggest thing I could get in the hope that it would make teaching a little bit easier. I didn't start right away because everything was very chaotic and parents were in chaos and, kids at home, all the rest of it. But I did pick one student to be my guinea pig, if you like, and with a mum that I knew quite well. So it was like, okay, can we try Zoom? What does this look like? Can you hear me? Can I see you? This sort of thing. Can we try FaceTime now? And currently I'm basically using FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, and some schools are on Microsoft Teams, so we use that. And I think basically they all are pretty okay if the internet is working all right. And so when I started, I was worried about all sorts of things like, did I need one screen where you could see the piano this way? And did I need to make my phone look down on my hands and all this kind of technical stuff? But once I started teaching kids again, I found that if I had a little kid, it was trying to, look in and see what my hands were doing, I would say, no, I'm going to play it for you, but I want you to look at the music. You know, I want you to follow it with your fingers. I'm playing the music. I don't want you to look at my hands anyway, because you're just going to remember what I pressed without really learning how to read. And I want you to read, you know. There's some good things and some not so good things, but I don't think people should be scared. The technology is pretty simple. And on the other hand, parents are learning how to do all this as well. One really good thing was that I was now going into, I visit people's homes anyway, but for a lot of the kids I teach in schools, I never get interaction with the parents. So now I was getting interaction with the parents. A lot of them were really hearing their children have a piano lesson for the first time. And all of that's really good bonding. I mean, I encourage that, and, you know, I encourage parent participation, and if they're around or any of that. And I think it was very good for our relationship. I haven't lost many students at all because of online teaching. That's fine. And what else? There's maybe one thing I don't like about it is I miss playing duets. We don't seem to be able to do that. And I don't know whether it's because I haven't found the right tech setting yet, but I tend to think that if I'm talking, the other side is made a bit quiet, and vice versa. So we both start banging at the same time. It's just not really happening. And so maybe that's a way to do that later. I don't know. But this is basically a good thing. I used to drive 800 kilometers a week to go to the Gold Coast, a cluster of parents, and to go to schools. And obviously that's really gone down to virtually nothing now. After COVID, I will want to teach in schools and have some interaction, but I'm also going to mix it up and stay online. And I think a lot of the children actually liked it too, because some of the parents are asking me, will you continue to teach online? Because my kid doesn't like to come out of class in school. You know, they have a rota and every week their time changes and stuff like that, so they don't miss the same subject. And they don't want to leave their classes. And I said, well, if you want to continue to be taught online, that's perfectly okay. Another thing is an adult started learning with me, and she's in New South Wales. And she's my friend. She's not a total stranger, but she said, you know, now you're online, can you teach me? So that opens up all sorts of possibilities to maybe reach people in places where your services aren't, or even to go overseas. You know, it's a big wide world, and I think it can be a very positive thing. I live in Corralbin. Corralbin is very musical. We have a local band, and I'm going to show you a little video while I play a song for you. And it's got some of the things the community has done. Once they got into lockdown, they made their own karaoke page on Facebook, and they're singing and uploading, you know, people playing music, and we're all supporting each other. It's really lovely. They support their local band. But what I want you to take away from my video is faces of my young students learning music from me, and faces of our band members who are much older, who are playing music with me. And to me, and other people in Corralbin enjoying music. And to me, that's like living proof that what I'm teaching has some real value in life. You know, monetizing it might be a bit difficult, but you know, people in hardship, they turn to music. There's lockdown mic groups all over the place. So I think what I'm going to do is play you a song, but also show you some of these scenes from my musical life. And I hope you can see young faces and old faces, and really take some heart, all you creative people out there that were doing good things, and use the internet to reach out as far as you can, you know. There can be some positive things out of it. So I ought to probably say goodbye to you before I run this video, in case I run out of time and you have to cut me off. So Michelle, thank you so much for letting me talk here today. And all these creatives should go out there and show their stuff online to the world, definitely, I think. All right, I'm going to share my content now and put the video on and then play for you, okay? Thank you so much. Let's try that again, screen. Okay, let's see. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day, dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people walking by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, watch them grow. They'll learn more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you, Joanna. That's great. A little snapshot of how a community can be transformed. And I think that is a really beautiful message to remember that this is a beautiful world. And I really, those conversations with Jeff and Julie talking about needing to dig into our resilience, but also going into our cave, our creatives are going into their caves. I think it talks about what Paul was saying about having this challenge of, we've got all this time, and so people are composing, they're writing, they're rethinking their businesses. So there's this incredible wellspring of creativity, and Spotlight and all these amazing stores are doing incredible businesses. People are going about their business doing creative stuff. I'd just like, before we go on to questions, and it's something that Roz said as well, is are we valuing the arts enough? Because we're sitting in front of Netflix. Now, every time we sit in front of a television show, you're watching actors, you're watching filmmakers, you're watching sound recorders, you're watching musicians, you're watching a whole field of artists who are now no longer get any work. And we can watch all these incredible live stream things happening for free on our internet. And I really liked that the example that Paul, you gave around people paying a certain amount, not being forced to pay a particular amount, but choosing to pay an amount for what they were streaming in recognition of the artists who have created that work. I think that's really important. And more so, I think, in terms of the communities where they've been completely devastated, not just from COVID, but also through these the bushfires, and that's, of course, most of Eastern Australia. So I wouldn't mind asking Roz some questions around what funding might be available for to help those people who have lost their incomes through bushfires and flood we've had as well, and COVID. Is there regional arts special funding to help people or communities become more resilient?
Yes, there is, and there's a fair bit going on in this space, and I know there's a lot of different commentary around all the different packages that are currently I've either been announced or are being announced. Probably just to wind back a tiny bit, like the Regional Arts Fund, which is what Regional Arts Australia manages on behalf of the federal government with our RPAs, our current round that's open, we have 150 projects across the country. All of those projects we got within the first few days, we're able to apply for that to be amended, adjusted, refreshed. So all those current funding rounds that were available for the Regional Arts Funds could be repurposed, and we've also put an extension onto those. So if people are currently funded, there's been quite a lot of flexibility provided for repurposing, extending, changing those projects, and the same for the Australia Council. I can't talk hugely on their part, but their current rounds, I know that they were also encouraging for applications, to repurpose funds or to restructure things into a much more immediate space. In the terms of our membership, the quick response programs, which we often run, quite a lot of those have been made available immediately, and they were available quite a few weeks ago, and they have changed some of those necessities a little bit, so that you're not necessarily having to apply to do a project which you aren't actually able to do because you can't do an outcome necessarily at the moment, but it could be practice-led or professional development or things like that in that space. Obviously, the Australia Council repurposed $5 million for their resilience funds, and that was for, I think it was survival, adaptation and creation, and I know that that's been incredibly well, there's been a huge response to that, and there's some, they're trying to look at, how we can possibly get some more funds into that, so to fund more. There's then the Regional Arts Fund new money, which I alluded to earlier, which is the 10 million that came, that was co-announced by the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister Paul Fletcher a couple of weeks ago. We're in the process of getting those contracts through government and out. That will be delivered through the Regional Arts Funds mechanism, and we will hope we'll see that towards the second half of this year, but not too far away. And we're putting a lot of work into making sure that that's for short-term, like immediate response, like quick response for whether it's for income, professional development, of loss of materials, loss of instruments and assets, because obviously bushfire and drought, there's been a lot of loss of equipment in that space, and then medium-term projects, and then long-term strategic projects over the next 2 or 3 years. Because the other thing that we're really aware of is that there's this immediate need, which we need to try and support and support artists and organisations so they can keep going. But there's critically a really important need to look at 2021, 2022, when we're starting to look at what a recovery might look like. And I think the festival's comment earlier is one to look at that. It's like, we're going to be in a situation where we need to look locally, we need to program locally, we need to program Australian content, Australian artists. We need to make sure that artists and orgs are ready and can be programmed across the country, good to go, because particularly our international festivals are not going to be programming, I would anticipate, international artists certainly within in 2021. So that's really interesting. There's also all the state government packages. Excuse me. Creative Victoria, Victoria State Government announced their package on Sunday, which has significant organisation, individual artists and regional components to it. New South Wales announced their package on Friday, a different framework, but still resources in there. WA and South Australia have also announced their packages that I was aware of, and I'm pretty sure, I just don't have the Queensland or the NTs in my head, but those state packages are certainly starting to materialise, and from what my understanding is, a lot of that is about getting resources out as fast as possible and a lot quicker than what we usually find ourselves working in. And then obviously there's the all of government response around job seeker and job keeper, which I don't want to open up that can too much in this space. I know we've been advocating with our colleagues for some changes, particularly around JobKeeper, but primarily the feedback that we've had is that JobKeeper is available to sole traders and to independent artists with ABMs, and we're trying to just make sure that the crunchiness of income that isn't necessarily linear from March to March is able to be addressed, so that artists, independent artists or small orgs, can get support through JobKeeper. And then the other thing that's happening at the moment is there's this immediate sort of relief packages that are being pushed through, both at a federal and a state level. And what we're working on with our colleagues now is what that, I guess I'm going to use the word recovery packages, it's not the right word, but what the next lot of packages will look like, and how we can work with artists and organisations to support that robust community going forward, and that's where a lot of our attention is now swung to. So whilst not discounting that we're still in a crisis space, we're also needing to start to look at the next 6-12 months and start to very much work with our colleagues, not just advocating but also actually putting in what the milestone points need to be, what the strategic framework needs to be to support the sector, and how we can do that hopefully differently.
Thanks, Ros. Michelle.
Still into having a chat with Mike. So how can artists be eligible for support packages to future-proof their arts business?
Thanks, Michelle. I think it's essential that as you move forward from where you are now to the next stage, the next phase, you are building your own capacity and are very much ready. Regional Development Australia offer marketing and associated tools to help build your marketing capacity and the way in which you can engage with a wider audience. These are very essential. I think that artists will need to look at writing, if not a business plan, then an operational plan that talks about their business model, so that when funding does become available, they have some documentation that they can then submit so that they don't get knocked back at the first hurdle at the opportunity for funding. I think that they're very important. I know that the National Indigenous Australians Agency have put in a lot of effort around this, around the Indigenous Advancement Strategy and the way in which it rolls out across communities, right across the whole of Australia, and that does engage with the capacity building and the opportunity for Indigenous organisations, especially to develop their model in terms of the artist space as well as the tourism space. Recently, the Queensland Government extended, due to COVID-19, the timeframes and the timelines to lodge applications for funding up to $1 million on a tourism strategy that was embedded with arts. From our point of view, we are developing and have been for some time developing an incubator model where we want to look at having a mentoring program to support not only artists, but people who want to support artists in terms of building a business model around that going forward and engaging so that we can keep people in our community in St. George. I've spoken with Scenic Rim Regional Council about something which could be quite similar in terms of the application here, and I'm sure that that's something that they are exploring and intend to explore moving forward. I think the key though is building your own professional capacity, being ready to go when the funding is available, as we've just heard from Ros, and making sure that you've connected with your community and your networking and all of those things, so that you are you've got a wider footprint when it's time.
Thanks, Mike.
So I think that raises an interesting question in terms of challenges and being prepared. And so I'd like to ask a question of Jeff and Julie regarding what do they perceive are the likely challenges for creatives to manage the stress that they might be experiencing or the loss of their identity, etc., and how can they work through these challenges?
I mean, I think it seems a really obvious thing, but I think to name some things is really, really helpful. In fact, one of my favourite researchers is Brené Brown, and she talks about the fact that if we name our emotions, we are far more resilient. And I think learning to name things like we feel a loss of identity, naming the emotions that we feel. Are we feeling a sense of grief? Are we feeling a sense of disappointment? Like just naming some of the things that we're feeling, naming what's going on, it kind of helps us begin to frame how to move forward with that. that would be kind of initial thought about the challenges. I think too, being kind to ourselves as creators and performers, because creatives are naturally very, very hard on themselves. There is a kind of set of core beliefs that we call unrelenting standards, which is having very, very high internalized standards of behavior. And a lot of the people I work with, they put unbelievable demands on themselves. And at a time, it's like they've got to run around and quickly make something happen. And I think just kind of allowing this space to go, this is a time unlike any other. This is a time of unusual rest in some ways. This is a time to allow us to kind of feel our wills in different ways, and to learn to be really kind to ourselves, because it means that we're going to emerge from this period of time being a far more resilient, creative person. If we just learn some of those, that self-compassion, self-kindness. And I would encourage those that are listening to just own it if they are putting this unbelievable pressure on themselves, and just say, just be kind to yourself.
To coin a swimming metaphor, look, we live near a beach that's sort of renowned for these rips that take people out to sea, and it's people get into distress very quickly. But the best thing to do is you can't fight the current. You have to float. There's a massive financial impact, and we know the arts sector this is all the way from regional arts all the way to international artists and international arts businesses have all been catastrophically hit. I mean, as much as I was talking in terms of hope, it's as if somebody put the brakes on an airplane mid-flight. I mean, there's it's quite unusual. So, but what can you do? You can only do what you can do. And so that's following up Julie's remark about let's not be too hard on ourselves. You only do what you can do. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just take care of yourself and float, because we will ride it out. Look, I love listening to Roz talk, because I sort of felt like somebody lifted the hood on the car and I saw the mechanism at work, and I thought, wow, it's really great. There's this, of course I've always known it, but the extent to which the people in who are actually in the forefront of driving cultural industry forward in terms of how government and intersects with the people on the ground. It's fabulous, actually, sort of hearing the wheels, watching the wheels turning. Really, will come through. There'll be, even though we were largely, I think, ignored in the early sort of stimulus attempts from federal government, I feel like there is a wave coming, and people are recognising that we are an important part of the life of the nation. So we've got to float rather than fight.
That's great.
And the other thing is, I think, if just as a sort of closer, if we're all looking at ourselves and going, wow, we need more resilience, it's not something that happens quickly. Resilience isn't something that you can get instantaneously. It's a little bit like developing a muscle. You have to do it over a long period of time. And so if some of us are feeling, wow, that's something I really need, then now's the time to make a decision to develop it over the long term, because there'll be other disruptions. If it's not COVID-19, it'll be something else. So now's the time to. We have, for example, we both have a daily sort of, how would you describe it? A mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
I know it seems really bizarre, but one of the first things that we do is we sit together, or we're sitting in bed together, and we're just focusing on our breathing for 3 or 4 minutes. And then what it does is it begins to develop your ability to put a stop to panicky thoughts. But it's a practice. You have to develop it over a long period of time.
That's great. Good advice. Michelle, I think the next question is coming from you.
Yes, so this one's for Alex and Paul. So it was actually mentioned in some of your discussions earlier too, so about the amount of product that's actually being offered online that's for free at the present moment, and what it'd be interesting to see what you see are the impacts for the arts, and really how do you sift through the good and the bad, because there is a lot of content out there available at the present moment. So how do you help break through that with your online presence as well?
Ooh, who do you want to talk first, Scott or Alex?
Go, Paul.
Okay, all right. Look, in a way, look, I think we've had a little bit of experience. It's something that has really sort of crashed through this idea of free content, and we've had it for quite some time, and it's called Facebook. I think trying to compete with cat videos. I mean, I think really that's possibly what we should be doing. If you want to do free content, just do cat videos to build up your brand, and then try and convert those followers over to something completely different. That's a joke. But look, I think you can see, you can get an idea on all the free content by really seeing what people pick up on and share. And I think what we really have to do is look, beyond that and go, well, look, we have to put a value on things. And look, there can be certain things where you go, right, that's a loss leader, and this is a way of introducing people to what we do, and that will build our audience. As long as that's part of an overall strategy. But if it's just putting out free content for just because you feel you got to do something, it's don't do it.
Yeah. So for me, the trying to break through the free content was something that initially made me just stop and think, I'm not going to produce anything to go online because I can't compete with YouTube. And I then had another big deep breath and stopped and rethought about it. And I could apply that thinking to anything, around. I mean, why are people coming to my classes? Why are people coming to my events and paying for those things when they could, find it free in other, situations? And it came down to me knowing that I believed in what I was doing, and also that what I was doing was different. Like, it wasn't something that you could get through all of these other channels. And so I sort of just went, right with it, and decided that I was going to make my content available online under subscription. And there was also the thing that I couldn't charge the same price as what I would charge at a physical space, because you are missing the experience and the social aspect of an online, presence that it was just different. So I was very aware that it needed to be a different price, but I also needed to be realistic. I couldn't be dirt cheap because I didn't want to then undercut my own, future work post this whole isolation period. And so the free content initially for me was a big barrier that I didn't want to have to try and jump over. But now that I've sort of just done it anyway, there's enough room for everyone. I don't agree with people giving away their stuff for free. I think, that's something that people should be looking at their own value and worth, but that's also not my place to tell someone how to run their own business model. And I don't know. I just don't think it should be something that should stop someone from going and doing something. You have a product, you have a service, you have a talent and an ability, you have something that people are interested in, and there is a value in that. And your people, your tribe will love you, they'll appreciate it, and they will pay for it.
That's great. Really good inspiration, because there is so much content. Final question is to Jess, actually. Jess, I just wanted to give you the last word, I think, before we finish up, about to explore possibly just briefly what your opportunities have come out of this really hard time for your community, but also what would you say to communities, to the general public, to the governments of this, to this country, this place, the world, about how we might value the arts greater and why it's important to communities like yourself in healing?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Curveball.
Oh, well, out of these unprecedented circumstances, because what does unprecedented mean? It means the extraordinary, it means the unknown, it means the remarkable. So out of those situations, I guess remarkable art can be made, extraordinary art can be made, powerful, potent art can be made. So in this, with disaster, and I'm no expert in this area too, so I'm just, feeling this and kind of going with how I feel. But in this recovery space at the moment with COVID-19, you've got people asking really big questions. So after the fire, we had really big questions being asked. We have a collective experience, we've got big questions. And then we've got this challenge of our social structures being tilted. Our normal is no longer recognisable. So in that space, we've got big questions and you've got a real shift in how. Like, is that where really amazing art can be made? Like in that space? Is that where things in history, like where really great stuff has happened? So if we can kind of look at this space and this opportunity, look at these big questions, look at the time people have to reflect, and look at these new, exciting challenges and all the wonderful way that everyone tonight has pivoted what they're doing, then maybe some really powerful, potent, transformative, wonderful art will come out of this. Let's hope. Some really beautiful, beautiful stories. Everyone, there's so many narratives that will emerge from these experiences. We all have a different story to tell, but it's going to be our story with all. So that's really exciting, I think. And I look forward to seeing what beautiful art can come out of this, there. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Jess. And I think that really sums up the importance of the arts and the fact that we need to honour the role that artists and art makers have, and this time and space for reflection, and also throwing back at us the rest of humanity about how we've experienced it. As you said, the artists, and I think Jeff and Julie said as well, about feeling, and so that we can help to articulate some of those deeper emotions about what's going on in the history of the planet right here, right now. Folks, that's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us from all parts of the planet. You'll be able to access transcripts from tonight's Arts Dinner soon. You can also view the YouTube live on the Arts Front website and the Live at the Centre website. We'd like to thank our chef tonight, Kate Raymont. I'm hoping there's some leftovers in the kitchen. Tonight's panel, Jeff and Julie Crabtree, Paul Osuch, Jessica Brown, Ros Abercrombie, Alex, I'm always going to get that wrong, Alex and Mike Townsend. We'd also like to thank and acknowledge Aunty Gerri Page, Raymond Cordingly and Brendan Knight, Joanna Funk and Beck Anderson for their contribution tonight. Behind the scenes, I'd like to acknowledge the team at Arts Front and Brown Velvet Cinema for helping us put this together, and thank the Regional Arts Service Network Southwest Queensland for their support. And last but not least, a big thanks to all the team of Scenic Rim Cultural Services for pulling this together. We hope you enjoyed this Arts Dinner and invite you to join us for the next Arts Dinner online Tuesday the 26th of May, when we talk about mentoring. What is it and how do you go about it? Thank you all. Stay safe and stay creative. Good night.